Today, we will be discussing personal identity and the brilliance of visual branding.
Welcome to Radiant Genius Podcast. I'm Elsa Mehary, a creative strategist and feminine entrepreneur. Join me and the occasional guest where we will illuminate the path to brilliance in wellness, tech, and business trends. I will be guiding you through the journey of your inner genius to transform you into your most brilliant and badass self. Give yourself permission to live out loud at the brightest level.
Welcome to the first episode of Radiant Genius Podcast. I'm Elsa Mehary, creative strategist and entrepreneur. So at a very early age, I understood how clothing would affect perception because in high school, I knew that I didn't have access to the type of clothing that I wanted or even was allowed to wear. I decided to go to an all-girls Catholic school, private, because they had a uniform. And I understood this would be a safer choice because I would be able to focus on what I was studying versus what I was wearing because it was that important. And I knew it would be a distraction, and I knew I would be either insecure or anxious or just not comfortable. And then that was going to interfere ultimately with what I really needed. The goal was to get great grades, graduate, and get out of my hometown and move to New York. I'm happy to say it all worked out. The end result was that I got into the only one in my high school to get into an Ivy League. So that uniform well paid off. Best choice ever. And I have to say, being aware of the culture of presentation and dressing a particular way started in my family. On my mom's side, I'm from a Christian Southern background, and I would have to say a little Southern belle, very, very much attuned to what someone looked like. And maybe not in the healthiest way, but it was a way to represent in Black communities' status as well. And a lot of people will understand this. There's not an assumed status, so you have to represent it consistently through your appearance. Always well-groomed, always put together, not just in church. And this was, for me, something that was instilled. My grandmother was a tailor. She also was an entrepreneur. She had clients. She would sew for the clients. She didn't work outside the house. So that was my first example of entrepreneurship in my family. And even though the rest of my family was very talented, they all had jobs outside the house. And so they were not able to express their creativity. Grandfather was a potter, father was a painter. He did paint professionally, but then he worked as a professor. My mom as a teacher. She was musically talented. So a lot of creativity I grew up seeing, being around, and really understanding that there's still this professional presentation. So this was the outlook that I developed. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and my grandmother was a Virgo. And so it was always be impeccable. So after I got to New York, after graduating, did all that, I was able to really come here and make my dreams come true. Spending time with my grandmother, I decided at a very young age, I think I was 12, that I wanted to be a fashion designer or a fashion magazine editor. I didn't become either, but more a blend of both, an art director. So I moved to New York, and within 3 days of moving here, I wrote a letter to, at the time, this Black fashion designer. There were so few. I wrote a letter to her. She didn't answer. But I saw her on the street and I was like, this is an omen and everything's about to happen for me. And literally within 3 days, I got a job at Time Inc., publishing company, no longer, at People magazine. And through working there and the people there and dressing impeccably, they recommended me for a job at InStyle. And after that, I spent 8 long formative years learning everything about and observing the nuances of who elevated, who moved, who didn't, what clothing meant, what vacation was status, this, that, like not just from the we're going to affect the trends perception, but even amongst the hierarchy within executive, on teams, with assistants, at parties, just on and on and on. Really, really great training ground for really understanding nuance and personal branding and expression. And I'm an observer and I took it all in. It was really amazing. So today I'm going to give a few of these tips. And so there's your personal style, your personal brand, and then brand identity. And for some people, it can all be one thing. Your brand identity could just be an extension of you. But if your audience is representative of you, but really it should all be consistent. And that way it's easier, unless you're developing something for a cohort that is like a super young or a lot older or just a different, but that's a little bit less personal and it's more like corporate and larger, which will be another episode. So first thing first impressions. So your first impression, we all understand, that is how people will understand you. They will make sometimes the snap judgment. And sometimes it's energetic. It's a vibe usually, but there's visual and auditory cues about someone. And people decide very quickly, like, you're my tribe or you're not. And these judgments they're influenced by signifiers, which we're going to talk about: clothing, body language, tone, the way you speak, the posturing, so many nuances, elements. And then there's similarity attraction. And so this is one of the strongest predictors of someone liking you. If someone perceives that you have a similarity, it could be background, but it's perceived, right? So it's like things that people may not be conscious of, or you remind them of someone. I get that a lot. Like, oh, we've met before, and I'm like, we've definitely not met, but I have something that reminds people there's a way about me. And if you are reminding them of their bestie, then they're going to like you. Or you could remind them of someone they really hate, and then that won't work out well either. But either way, it's out of your control. But people are naturally drawn to those people who share similar interests, values, or backgrounds, right? So I'm going to talk about two concepts: signatures and signifiers, right? Signifiers indicate shared hobbies, tastes, opinions, and they can foster a sense of connection and liking. And all of these things should be authentic, but signifiers are things, visual cues. It could be, for men, it could be a type of watch. It could be a specific haircut. It could be the lacing of a shoe. It could be the color. It could be the shade. It's a salmon short, or it's a particular type of nuanced color, or a small logo, or absence of logo. There's cultural and context influence for all the signifiers. And there's too many to go into detail about, but everyone understands, either consciously or subconsciously, that you're signifying to a group that I belong in this group, or I want to belong in this group. And then if you're signifying correctly, you will be either accepted or rejected from that group. And that's like a bunch of rules. There are certain groups, they have a lot of rules. This is something that is exclusive of trendsetters. Trendsetters don't use signifiers. That is the signifier. I set trends. I'm always doing something new. I'm ahead of the curve. I am innovative, and I follow my own drum. That's a signifier. And so it won't be the only thing consistent is change with a trendsetter. But we're talking about the group of people who have adopted, if you will, a uniform. And they're signifying, I'm in this tribe, I'm staying within this tribe, and I'm signifying that I have accepted the cultural nuances and rules of the tribe, or corporate community, or friend group or holidays where people go on vacation together and it's like, happy 50th birthday, Jesse. That's like, this is our group. And we are signifying that I'm in this group. So if anybody sees you, they can identify you. That's a little bit more obtuse. Then there is signature. So your signature can be within the signifier. And that signature is something that is unique to you and it's consistent in how you present yourself. It could be one thing, but let's just say there's a whole quiet luxury movement, which is pretty much very, I would say, American and maybe Western European. This quiet luxury of everything is beige, everything is quiet, everything is very Puritan, everything is religiously restricted, if you will, in clothing form. So it's without blemish is how I think of quiet luxury as a signifier. But within that, there are levels. So your signature within this quiet luxury could be a particular shade of hair color. And that could represent younger, older. That could represent a particular level on the status. If you notice, women who want to represent something being maybe more available will go very, very, very blonde. Maybe if it's summer. And the very, very blonde, almost white blonde, indicates something. It's different for everybody, so I can't say specifically what it indicates, but that could be someone's signature, that they have this particular shade that they keep, and that's their look. Or the opposite. It could be a heavy brow. For me, it is, I always wear a red or pink lip, and I would call it a bold lip is my signature. No matter what I'm wearing, no matter what I'm doing, if I'm going to yoga and it's 7 a.m. and I'm in a full gray aloe yoga outfit, I will still have a signature lip. And so signature is something that it adds a little bit. And think iris, apparel, big glasses, jewelry. It doesn't have to be one thing, but it's something that sets you apart. And I always recommend, and let's say Steve Jobs had his signature, and it was the t-shirt. I think he was the innovator of the tech bro t-shirt and jeans look. That was more of a signifier, and maybe his glasses for him was his signature. But everybody has something. If it's big, if it's small, that people recognize. And if you don't have something, I'd recommend that you get something, because everyone likes to have this unique thing about them, and it becomes easier to identify you. And this is something if you're creating a personal brand, if you're creating, you want an identity. And this is even something significant to, for example, when we used to hire illustrators or photographers, they all had a signature in their work. That was something that identified them. Picasso had his signature. It was the way that he represented his figures. That was his signature. And they were consistently changing. And he did a lot of figurative. For illustrators, for example, it might be a textural style, or it might be, but it's something that says like, oh, I know who did that. I can tell who that is. I also always wear this particular earring that I got from India. And no one else really wears it this way. Not that it's unique within India, because everybody has it there, but in the United States, no one really wears it. So that's another signature thing. Like someone saw me in a photograph somewhere, and it was like through a window, but they saw the earring and they were like, I knew it was you. There's something amazing about having something that is unique to you and instantly identifiable. So think about what your signature is, what it could be, something that you can incorporate that is like your thing. If it's always big hair, if it's a particular type of bright shoe, if it's always gold. I feel like those two things make up a consistency about your unique presentation that is good to incorporate. So I want to talk a little bit about the halo effect So the halo effect is this cognitive bias that causes people to assume that someone has a positive or a negative quality based on your signifier. So you can use this in a way to manipulate, if you will, when needed. And people do this when they go to court, wear like certain color, although they will be coached to wear certain colors or structured suits to signify that they are a type of person. And I'm sure people do. You do this in an interview, right? And this gives you the halo effect because of preconceived association. People who wear suits are generally more organized, they're neater, they're better workers, etc. It signifies competence. And I would say these are like not necessarily so accurate in our modern age. I think these are things that are like low level, low hanging fruit to the really unaware. I think that it does work, but I think more people these days are tuned into energy, how people make them feel, but that's your base level as like your presentation. It's the instant, and especially I would say with men, if someone is just, they get like, that's your first entry. Like, oh, I was drawn to you because of X. I saw you had this. And it won't be a conscious processing. It will be a processing that happens subconsciously, but it will affect a perception of who you are and where you want to be. So I'll give you 2 examples of 2 times that this worked against me. Okay, so I've traveled quite extensively, and I always make it a point because of this identity politics, if you will, to really understand the presentation of the culture that I'm entering. And often I want to blend into the culture so that I can have a better experience. And so I'll give 2 examples of times this did not work in my favor and how really the cultural and contextual influence makes such a huge difference. And it can vary widely across different cultures. And if you're exploring a culture that you don't know too much about, even asking questions and finding out won't necessarily solve what you're trying to achieve based on other things. And so I will tell you, I visited India and I did my research and I was like, what are the young girls wearing? And it was caftan and jeans. And, a certain kind of jeans, right? Like slim tapered versus baggy, et cetera. Because I did full research. I was like, I'm going in. I want to blend. I was going by myself. I was going to a friend's wedding. So for 1 week, I was going to be traveling alone. And the next week, I would be with the wedding party. They had a bunch of events and, I had all the outfits for that. And I was with the group. And so totally safe. Outside of that, though, I wanted to just walk around India like I was blending. I did not blend. I'm going to tell you, it was not a good idea. And I can laugh about it now. I was upset at the time because the level of staring, the level of like, who's this person? Are you Indian? Are you not? You're definitely not Indian, but I don't know. Clothes are giving South Indian, the hair, like all the things. It was confusion. And when people are confused, they don't know where to put you. They're not able to identify you. It ends up being problematic for you because they won't have a context in which to relate to you. And that's what you're really trying to achieve, right? You're trying to achieve this similarity pairing where it's indicates safety. If you feel we're similar, then you feel safe. And so you'll let me in. Everything about identity politics and this branding is that either you're going to buy my product, you're going to be my friend, you're going to go on a date, you're going to some way like connect with me. And so in that India trip, it would have been better if I went as an American because they understood Americans and they could have, jeans and a t-shirt and a hat, boom, American, I got you. And they would have known how to interact with me or not. But my whole, like, you're Indian, but you're not Indian, I'm not sure. So I got a lot of are you from South Africa? Which I totally didn't understand. Like, first of all, no. Second of all, how'd you even come up with that? And then nobody would really talk to me. So because they were confused. And I don't know what they thought, but whatever it was not good. Secondly, Egypt. So I was a lot younger. Didn't put too much thought into clothes, except I knew I was going to a Muslim country to study for 6 months. And so I literally just brought head to toe black and like no skin showing. So it was to the wrist and to the ankle. I don't even know where I got all long skirts and black pants. And I even had a veil. I got to campus and all the kids at my university, American University, were really wealthy Arabs. And they had on mini skirts, the latest from Paris, all the fashion, blah, 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 which now there's like all these reality TV shows and you could see what's going on in Dubai and Instagram. So you just knew what was that. There was none of this at the time. So I just went in cold. And they were not necessarily wearing any headgear. They didn't have hijabs. They didn't have any of the more, which is more common now. At the time, it was a little bit less conservative than it is now. Let's just say I quickly got some clothes because I was young and I wanted to have friends and blend. And I got some stuff made. I got some cute shorter skirts, which I didn't wear on the streets, but I wore at school. And it was interesting. But I will say 2 things. I would wear a hat. And if you were visiting any country and you wear a hat, you're automatically an American. And it's something that indicates to local people, if you're wearing a hat, you're American. So I would get like, people would just yell out English words to me. Michael Jackson, California. And those were good days. The days that I did not wear a hat, and I was not aware of this, again, this was in hindsight, I had to do math and be like, the days I did not wear a hat, they thought I was from one of 2 countries nearby. So either Sudan, I think, or Ethiopia. And I am actually from Ethiopia. But Sudan supported Saddam Hussein, which at that time was problematic. And they thought I was also problematic. And they would curse me in the streets. I didn't really know what they were saying because my Arabic wasn't to that level. But those were not good days. American days, good days. Sudanese days, not so good days. And I will say this, clothing has an effect on many things. And I think people know that, but I think traveling internationally, number 1. Number 2, how you're representing in your brand, all things that communicate so many things, so many important things. And people who understand the psychology of clothing understand that it is something that is really important. A lot of people have the, I would say, privilege to not care. I think the uber wealthy don't have to impress. And you will find that group of people will wear, my friend calls it birdwatcher clothes, because it's literally like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't have to impress anyone at any point. Your judgment of me makes no difference of entry or not entry because I could buy you. I could buy any of these people. So it's like, I don't have to do anything. And you'll find that like the wealthier you are, the more, I would say, unattractive you dress. And it's just like become a thing. And so it's the stereotype now. It's like the wealthy people, they wear like rags or torn clothes. And I'm not sure if it's on purpose or what, but it is something that happens. And I think it just becomes this like, how badly can I dress? Because it's almost a game, because it's like, I still get respect. I still get anything. I can do anything I want to do. And it doesn't really matter. This has no effect. Now, outside of that group, it makes a huge difference. And that's why, like, they say the nouveau riche, you can tell nouveau riche because they're doing all these things to affect status. And then they'll notch up from that. Old money, they're opposite. They want to be muted and be subdued about their well. And then the tier up that I just talked about. So there's so many different things that are communicated with your clothing and appearance and the effect that it has. And this is your personal style. This is your brand even, and you can apply these same things. And so I'll just get into now. If you've ever purchased a diamond, hopefully not a blood diamond, if you've ever purchased a diamond, they tell you there are 3 C's to look out for in picking. There's color, cut, and clarity. And so I always apply those same 3 things to personal style, personal brand, and brand identity. So your color is really obviously what we see. And I break color up into 2 categories. People get so confused about color, but it's really what you're drawn to. And color has energy. And I'll do another podcast about specifically breaking down color, because each color corresponds to a chakra, which corresponds to energy, which corresponds to sound waves, which corresponds to healing vibration, which corresponds to, it just it's a whole level and realm. Is very important. Color is really, really important. And so it's interesting, the whole quiet luxury thing, which I'm not a big fan of, which is this neutral and beige and absence of color. Not a fan, obviously. I love bright colors. I don't always wear, but I'm not averse to it. And I do think color is important for your senses and your overall energetic vibration. But I break color up into really 2 categories, color and no color. And the no color category is black, white, and neutral. And then the color category is everything else. And then once you go in one direction, when I'm working with clients, I'll have them pick a route. And based on that route, then we decide from there where we go next. And then cut. So cut is your structure. So for clothing, is it fitted? Is it loose? Is it tailored? Is it hybrid? For branding, this would be your fonts. Are your fonts in that same category? Are your fonts serif, sans serif, flirty, script, serious, bold, modern, feminine? That's your structure. And all that communicates a variety of things as well. That's almost the outfit of the language that you're going to be communicating in. And you can hybrid, you can have very modern font, for example, and what your language is can be very feminine and flirty. And that gives a fuller, rounder, more interesting picture of your brand or who you are. And the clarity. So the clarity for me, that is, are you consistent with what you're saying with your outfits? Am I getting the same thing every time? So the clarity for me is I'm always going to give style. Just if it's yoga, if it's we're going to the bank, we're going grocery shopping, it's going to be giving, I would like to call it theme. It might be Italian countryside. It might be a young Bridget Bardot, but you're going to get emotion. You're going to get vibrant. You're going to feel okay, I'm noticing, I'm seeing, I'm feeling here. It's never going to be rollers in the house coat, ever. And so that's the consistency. Is it going to be different? Is it going to be stylish? Is it going to be conservative? Is it going to be really conservative? But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun, always. So there's uniform and then there's consistency in, and maybe I'm in the trendsetter category, I don't know, but it's my own unique personal. Might be vintage one day, it might be modern, but it's never going to be logos. It's never going to be high fashion. It's always going to be unique personal style, right? And so that's the clarity that you're going to get with me. A Steve Jobs clarity is going to be jeans and a t-shirt. So you're always going to get that, a jeans. I don't think I've ever seen him in a suit. I don't know. Never say never, but it wouldn't be a pink suit, right? It's still going to be giving muted. It's going to be giving basic, simple, and casual. And that's his clarity and consistency in his messaging, right? And so it's you wouldn't wear a gown to the gym. You wouldn't wear sweats to a wedding. right? You want to communicate a consistency and that you understand how to express through your personal brand, through what you wear, you are communicating, and you want to communicate that you understand the psychology of that. Because everything is information, right? And in branding, this looks like your messaging. What are you saying with your tone, your words, the delivery? Is it clear? Is it reflecting who you are after you've picked the color and the font and the look? And again, in visual brand identity, it's your logo, your color scheme, the typography, the overall design aesthetic should align with your brand message and your values, right? So as a creative, the way that I dress corresponds to me living my life creatively. Like I'm always reinventing. I always have a unique personal presentation along with my signature lip. A strong visual identity helps create a lasting impression. And really in today's high level noise and distraction, that goes a long way. A lot of people add a bit of design at the end of the process, but we're in a culture now where we see the advent of companies like Apple, who really pioneered and innovated design, integrating with function and not just as an added on aesthetic feature. And a lot of the really more successful higher level brands have followed this model, especially a lot of tech companies that are not first and foremost fashion or style brands that integrate design as one of their main features. I remember buying my first cell phone and feeling so sad that the design was ugly and bad, but knowing like I had to have one and that I had to carry it around with me. Now we have options. Oh, thank God. These young people will never know how we suffered. So these are all things that can help you find your tribe or help you find your target audience or help your target audience find you. And previously, you would have to figure these things out alone. Now, with social media, you can really follow key social media accounts and really just observe, or you can hire certain people to help you. They're literally like, they're consultants that can help you in any category with consistency, translating who you are to what you're expressing and that there's alignment there. You have clothing stylists, brand identity designers, you have color consultants that make sure that the shade, are you a warm skin tone? Should you be wearing these set of colors or that set of colors, and then work out which colors work best. And that just takes everything up a notch. You're just, subconsciously everyone is like, oh my gosh, everything is just in alignment. And all this information may seem frivolous, but it's opened up doors for me. It's gotten me into last minute gala invite because people know I can effortlessly pull together something in a Hollywood minute. And it also saves you time if you understand what works for you and you have a whole aesthetic. And then you can just focus your time on creating more fun and exploration in your company, your business, and your brand. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Radiant Genius. Next week, we will discuss authentic voice and self-promotion.
Thanks for listening, sending soothing calm to your nervous system. Hit subscribe and join me on this feminine-led entrepreneurial journey. The Radiant Genius podcast, where we discuss all things brilliant.